What's up, folks? Today we're going to do a deep dive on the Ecto Goggles Light and Sound Kit, and we'll do a walkthrough of the assembly. Let's get started. So, some of the light and sound kits have started going out this week, and actually, I'm surprised that so many people that bought the unassembled kit, although I feel like the price point on that is pretty affordable for what you're getting. So today we're going to do some of the assembly on. I've got two of the boards. I've got this is the GB fans, and then this is the Goon board. And you can see, I mean, they're laid out very similarly. They're pretty much, you know, set up the same way, but the form factor is a little bit different because the goggles are pretty different. Really, the GB fans goggles, you've got so much stuff you've got to work around. So that's kind of the reason for the weird shape on that. And then the Goon goggles, you know, those are pretty straightforward. There's really nothing on the internals for that. I mean, this is I've got that installed, but if I just take that out, this is for the beacon light, but there's really nothing on the inside that you have to work around. You can just kind of set those in there. Let's see. First off, components. Components, I've already kind of divvied these up into the various buckets here. And I've got a sheet that anyone that ordered an unassembled kit and is going to put this together themselves, you got one of these checklists in your box. And that's really because I do the same thing with a PKE meter. There's 30 something parts for that kit, and I want to be sure. I don't think that I've actually missed a single part on any of the ones that I've sold so far. So the checklist really helped. So let's kind of briefly go through the parts here. Starting with the main control board. This is what this is called. It's main control board. And I usually circle which one you ordered. The soundboard. So these are the reason I went with this soundboard, which is a DY SV17F. There's really no like DF player kind of name for it, but that's the name for it. And the reason I went with this is because it was the flattest soundboard that I could find, and you can see that that's pretty flat. It also surface mounts, so I could make it, you know, attach it right to the main board, and it really wouldn't take up extra room. I think if I used a DF player, which I could have done that, but DF player is a little wonky to work with, but it had a lot of other functions and stuff that I wasn't going to really need for this, and plus it would have stood up off the main board a little bit further. So we got your soundboard, accelerometer that's in this bag right here. We'll look at that later. You've got two of these long stem LEDs. Then you've got a red and a green 5mm LEDs. Next, we've got the right angle USB-C PCB. So this little thing right there, and it had to be that size. It could not have this sticking out straight because that would have made the entire board too tall to fit in either of these sets of goggles. So it had to have that flat PCB on it. Now I'm sending 9 of these. They're very small. I don't know if you can see. Probably not. that's the housing for right there. But this is what all the batteries plug into. This is what the beacon light and the USB connector, they all plug into that, and the speaker. Speakers probably was originally the one thing that I was using this for, but I thought, well, it's small enough. I'll use that for all of them. And actually, I think I mentioned this on one of the other videos. I had planned on having these boards be all separated. So you're going to have one board here, one board here, one here, and one here. So it would have been, there would have been wires in between each one of these sections, but it's a lot easier to do that, and there's a lot less soldering. So let's see. So then there is one pin, or one connector, excuse me, that has straight pins. You're not gonna be able to see that, so I'll probably put a picture up there. One of them has right angle pins, and the other one has straight pins. The one with the straight pins, that's for the charging port, which is right there, and it's got straight pins because it needs to basically face you so you can plug your charging cable into it. T-display, which is this is really an ESP32 microprocessor. It's not an Arduino. It's an ESP32, although it runs basically all the same code as an Arduino, but you have to usually use different libraries. So this is your microcontroller and display, and this is important. In the very bottom of your box, there's going to be a connector wire. That's important because you're going to use about this much of the wire on the PCB, and the rest of this wire you're going to use to connect this USB-C connector to the main board, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, last thing, you've got two of these batteries. So you've got, each kit comes with 2 batteries. You can purchase more batteries. The Goon, let's see, I'll show you. So inside the back of the Goon insert, you actually have a lot of space. You have a lot more room in this. So if I were gonna suggest like which one to get, I think to mod and to kind of tinker around with, I would say the Goon, because you've got a lot more room to work with in the inside. You can customize the 3D print when you do that as well. The GB fans, you're really, I mean, it's really well made, but you're really kind of at a disadvantage because of all of the aluminum inserts that are in that. You're not gonna be able to really customize much in there. But for the Goon model, I was able to find a way to fit batteries in here, and that's really why so this spot right there for the accelerometer, that was right in the center right here. But you can see I ended up moving that over right here, and that freed up a lot more room in the middle. So now for the Goon model, I can put a battery here, I can put one here, I can put one there, and I can put one here. And there have been a couple of people that have ordered these assembled, and I was able to put all the batteries in there. But when you put the batteries in there, you need to glue them in, and we'll talk about that a little later on. Let's see, speaker. So you got your speaker, which is a 20 millimeter speaker, and then you have a charging cable. Each kit comes with a charging cable, and if you lose one, just let me know. I'll send you another one. Okay, so now that we've got all the parts out of the way, let's pack these back up here. Oh, actually, I'm just going to dump these out because I'm going to use them. All right, what I usually do when I am building these is I work from the shortest component, meaning the shortest component to the base of the board up. So the tallest component would be the display board. So that's usually the last thing that I do. But if you're working from the shortest one up, that gives you an advantage of you don't have to reach over taller components to try to solder, because you may end up burning them or knocking a resistor off or something like that. But for the most part, I mean, this is really straightforward to put together. All right, so we're going to start with the right angle connectors. Now there's actually let's see. There we go. Oh. Okay. So the right angle connectors here, they go there, one for the speaker. You've got 3 right here for the battery, and then you've got 1 here for the beacon and 1 for the USB. And this is on the GB fans. On the Goon, you have 1 for the extra battery, 1 for the beacon, and 1 for the speaker here. And then you have 1 for the USB and 1 for the beacon on this side, as well as the batteries there. So there's more places on the Goons because there's more room, and you have more options on the Goon. So there's more of these required on the Goons than the GB fans. So usually what I do, because these are so small, you can't really clip anything to these. What I usually do is I put the speaker one in, and I'll go ahead and put the USB, and I'll put the beacon one in right there, and then I'll flip those down. So I need to put another one up here just so it's not, so everything's even. And it doesn't take much on these. All right. And as always with these types of components that have plastic and metal, don't leave your soldering iron on it very long because it will melt the plastic, and you don't want that. All right. Let's see here. Yeah, that looks good, I think. Yep. Okay, so we got those 2 on. So we're going to do the batteries now. Just connect those right there. When you get one of these kits, you actually get 9 of these in case you need to redo them if you mess one up, if you melt it, or if in the future you accidentally break one off, because they do bend a little bit if you're not careful. And so I send extra in case you need to replace it. All right. And I can usually put one of these together in 30 minutes if I have all my parts kind of laid out, and I use these little plastic buckets to go ahead and sort out my parts for for assembly, so I usually have about 4 or 5 of these set up to assemble. So if you're working pretty fast, you can get them done really quickly. It does not want to go. There we go. Thank you. Okay, so those are all done. All right, and this is the Goon, and you can see you've got 3 here, 3 here, and 3 here. Now, something that I do want to bring to your attention on both of these is that for some of the connectors, I left some options. So for the LED, green LEDs that go in the lenses, for example, I use these top 2 holes, but I also left an option for you to use a right angle connector there if you wanted to. And that's because someone had written me and said, can we take the LEDs out if we want, and put them back in later if we wanted to? And I said, well, you can do that if you wanted. You can make it so that you can disconnect them and reconnect them or something like that if you wanted. So you can buy these connectors. They're 1.25 millimeter. Sometimes they're called micro JSTs, but you can solder those in if you're doing this yourself. Solder those in there, and you can actually use the male connectors and just solder some to a couple of LEDs, and you can take those in and out of lenses. Now, I didn't do that as part of my assembly because the vast majority of people, they just want to drop this into their goggles and that's it. And I would have to make those for each individual set of goggles, and that's just not something I've got time for, and nobody would really want to wait that long. So the easier option is just to fasten the LEDs to this. You can make it all one big assembly and just drop it into the goggles. The other thing is over here, you've got your switch, but I also added a second place for a switch right there. So you could actually use both of those if you wanted to. The reason I added a switch over there is because you've probably seen some goggles when people assemble them, and for the actual movie prop, there is a turn switch that's on the other side, and so I added that. This would sit in here like this. I added the ability for you to put an actual turn switch in there if you wanted to wire up your set to use that as the actual on and off switch, which would be really cool. And I think you've got room in the Goons. I don't think you've got room in the GB fans for that, but if someone makes it work, more power to you. That's what they're there for. If you want to try wiring that up, feel free. I've not done it yet. I've tested it. I know that works, but I'd like to see somebody actually implement that. That would be pretty cool. The other thing that I added a place for was the beacon light. Now the beacon, if you order one of the beacon lights, which is, I've got a shorter cable version that I'll show you right here. But if you order one of these, when you get it from me, it's got a lot longer wire on it so that you can put it kind of wherever you need to inside the goggles. But for this, if you didn't want to use the male connector, and let's say that you wanted to, I don't know, put the beacon on the top or somewhere else, like maybe on the side. I actually have connectors. There's one on the top right there. There's one on this side, and then there's one on the other side. And this is for the Goon. For the GB fans, I actually just have one on this side right here, and I've got 2 up here on the top. So if you wanted to have a beacon over here on this side of the goggles, it would be a bit easier for you to run a wire around there than to run a wire this way, because you've got all this aluminum to work with inside the frames. So there's one here, and one here for the beacon. And then obviously you've got your connector there for the beacon light as well. So if someone is able to get those working with the switch, or they solder the beacon directly to the board, that would be pretty interesting to see. So hit me up if you do that. So I'd like to see what you had in mind and what you how you implemented it. Okay, so next we're going to put the soundboard on. Like I mentioned, this is just surface mount. And I use these. I bought a ton of these little clips from like Dollar General, or like, I don't know, one of the dollar stores. And they actually come in a bigger version, which I use. I use these a lot. I use the smaller ones a lot more though, because these are just perfect for kind of gluing stuff together or holding things in place. This can be a little bit tricky though, since this is surface mount. What you'll see is, and I'll put a close-up picture on this. Let's see if I can show you here. You'll see, use this pick right here to show you. Each one of these, let's see if I can zoom this. Each one of these spaces has a little divot right where it meets the pad, right in there. Yeah, you can see it right there. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to try to get your solder wire in there, in that little divot. And you need to make sure that both the top and the bottom are lined up, and make sure that this USB port is facing that way. Now, I go ahead and tell you, once you get this soldered on, you're not going to be able to put sounds on it or anything like that. So if you, for some reason, you replace this, you're going to have to remove the old one, or you're going to have to remove this to even put the sounds on it, because unless you can find a right-angled micro USB connector that fits in there. I have looked everywhere for one, because I actually assembled a couple of these without the sounds on them, and I had no choice but to try to take the whole thing off, and I messed one up in the process of doing it. So make sure you do that right, because when you get the kit from me, it's going to have the sounds on this. All right, so we're going to connect this to the helping hands here. And I usually do it, zoom out here now. Okay. I usually do it so it's angled a little bit. Once you get, make sure, double check your alignment on that too. Yeah, see, this is a little off. All right. Once you get a couple of these done, then you don't really need the clip anymore, but it's important for the first few that you do. And you'll want to make sure that your soldering tip is very clean and hot for this, because you're going to need to put quite a bit of solder, not too much now, but quite a bit of solder in there to get the main board pad joined to the soundboard. So you can see I did that pretty quickly, and then just flip it over, and you can get the 3 on the bottom right there. Now this is 0.3 millimeter soldering. This is solder. This is what I normally use for everything. If you're new to soldering, I encourage you to watch some other videos. A lot of the soldering irons that you buy, when you get them, they come with enormous solder. Like, I don't know what size it is, but it's way too big for some of these projects, and you end up with solder everywhere. And when that happens, nothing works. You're going to end up with shorts, and you're going to end up frying whatever you're doing. Yeah, so you can see here there's solder there on those pads and solder there. And I'm only doing the pads that require solder. There's really no reason to solder all the other ones. You're not, there's no pressure being put on this. It's not, going to knock against anything else. So why waste our time and why waste our solder with all of those other ones? And here's the Goon board, soundboard. Very similar attachment, identical actually. So there's really no difference between how those are assembled. All right. So the next part is the accelerometer. And the accelerometer is what is responsible for the motion on of the bar graph on the screen. It's kind of the magic behind the goggles, if it were. And I don't know how I came up with the idea to do that, but I'd already considered doing it that way with an accelerometer, just detecting motion and moving up and down to make the bar graph go up and down. And I think somebody else posted something they were doing at the same time that I was working on. And I was like, man, that's unusual that we came up with the same idea at the same time. So there's a couple ways that you can do this. What I do is I stick the header pins into the back, and I use these straight pins. So I stick the header pins into the back, and then I put actually, here's what you can do. Yeah, why don't we do it this way? So I've labeled the places on the board that need solder. So again, why solder all the components? If you don't need to, you're not using those pins. You're really only using 4 on there. So we're only going to worry about those 4. So once the header pins are attached, you can clip off the bottoms if you want, but we'll get there when we get there. Let's do this first. Look at that real quick. Now you can use your helping hands on this or whatever you want to do. Really, it just seems a little bit easier to lay it down to actually do this part. And I'm not doing a great job on it, but okay. Okay, so header pins are attached, and you're just going to slide the accelerometer onto those pins. Slide it all the way down till you can't go any further. And I left quite a bit of room for the accelerometer in both of them, so and you're gonna want to try to solder in this area right here, going in this direction. If you go over the components in this way, you could damage something, or you could accidentally drop some solder. So you want to avoid putting a solder iron over a component. I have learned that the hard way. Okay, so let's get your nippers here, and you can cut those 4 header pins. Cut those off right there, and then on the bottom, you're just going to cut those 4 that you've soldered. Once you do that, you can just take out the rest of them, and you need to apply some solder on the bottom. It's the whole thing won't really work if it doesn't pick up a signal from the accelerometer. So it'll basically look like it'll give the impression on the bar graph that you're basically looking up, instead of displaying the bar graph. Okay. So there you go. Accelerometer is on. Everything looks straight. So the other way that you can do this, which is probably a better way if you're not careful with your solder, is you can just put the header pins through, and then just put your accelerometer on top of that. And you can use one of your clips. If you have any of these kinds of clips, you can use like a chip clip or something like that as well. But you can use one of those to keep that in place. And if you're really good, you can use the back side of the clip to hold the header pins in place as well. So you can do it that way. Actually, you need to do it on this side because you're gonna need to solder right where it was. Let's see. Yeah. So that works. You can do it that way. And once you get 1 or 2 of those pins soldered, then you don't really need the clip anymore. The way that I showed, this is the Goon model right here. The first way that I showed you on the GB fans, that is okay to do, but if you put too much solder on the header pins, the accelerometer won't be able to lay all the way flat. So that's kind of the disadvantage of doing it that way. Okay. So after you, on the Goon model, the way that I did the headers, after you clip off the back, you still have to solder those back in because really the header pins are just attached to the accelerometer right now. So we need to put some solder on that. All right. That looks pretty good. So that accelerometer is attached now. So one thing about the accelerometer, if you get the entire thing put together and it's for some reason it doesn't seem like the bar graph is working, most of the time the problem I found is that the accelerometer is bad and you have to replace that. Which if you have one of those solder suckers, that's not hard to do, and you can even use the original header pins if you didn't mess those up. But that's more often or not, that's the problem. And the accelerometer, you can just buy one of those. I'm not programming it any certain way. You can just buy one of those off Amazon or wherever. But problem is Amazon's going to want to sell you like 10 of them. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is the LEDs, which are right here. And these are your indicator LEDs for when the sound changes and when the bar graph changes. That these LEDs change as well. On the LED itself, remember the long lead is the positive and the short one is the negative. And I just bend those like that on the back if it's all the way down to the surface. And they're labeled red and green. If you mess that up, I don't know what to tell you. I can't make it any easier. So red to red, green to green. And we'll put these in the helping hands just so it's a little bit higher up here. But these are pretty easy to solder. Okay, pretty easy. And then just snip these off. I bend them back up straight like that. And then just go down the row and snip these off. There you go. Okay. All right, so we're gonna do the switch next. We've got both of our boards. The switch it's got a long handle on it, and it's gonna go right here. Now, there's a couple ways you can do this. You can use your helping hands to kind of hold it in place. What I do is I use these clips. Use one right there, and I use the other one on the other side right here. And I just set it down and get that one in the middle. Once you get that one, then you don't need the clip anymore. So just take those off, get the other two pins. If you end up having to use your helping hands, good luck, because the switch is so small that it's really, really hard to figure out how to situate it so that your helping hands can even hold it. All right. Once you get that added, you can just snip off the extra wire there. Since it's the power switch, though, you do want to make sure that you've got enough solder. Make sure those are all have really good connections. Alright, so switch is on. Let's say you're a little over halfway done now. Next we'll do the lens lights, LEDs, whatever you want to call them. The lens LEDs. Now these are long. These are 3mm. They're long stem or long lead LEDs, and they work pretty well for getting the LED directly in the line of sight in your goggles. I think there's probably a couple of people that like actually want to wear their goggles so they can see out of them. I'm not really interested in doing that because they're not very comfortable to wear for a long period of time. I like just kind of having them on my forehead if I'm like trooping or on a parade or something like that. Anyway, so what I do is I'll put these kind of angled. I don't know if I can tilt this up, but yeah. So I'll have it just in the PCB like that, and it's okay if they droop down a little bit. They don't have to be straight out, but I'll angle them in there just like that. And I don't know if I can see, zoom out a little bit. Yeah, there we go. And then what I do is, well, I don't know if I can, let's turn that way. And then I will come over the back side of this and solder, put some solder right there. And remember, the long lead is positive, the negative lead is, the short lead is negative. So make sure you put those in the correct space. Okay, let's do the other one real quick. And there's probably a much better way of doing this, but that's the easiest way to me, and it has always worked pretty well. So you'll get these in, you'll get these set up like this. The next part, you can actually go ahead and snip off the back of those if you want. Get that excess wire off. Always make sure you're cutting the wire as close as you can, because you don't want anything kind of protruding on the back, because it'll have to sit in the insert, or it'll sit inside the goggles, and you want it to go as far down as you can. All right, so once you have these in, what you're going to do is you're going to take some needle nose pliers, and like even smaller if you've got smaller ones. On the these LEDs, you'll see these two kind of divots in the leads just underneath the LED. So what you want to do is you want to put your needle nose pliers across those, and you're going to want to bend that up just like that at 90 degrees. And you're going to do the same with the other one. And you'll bend that up just like that. And then once you have that done, you can bend these up into place. And feel free to, if you want to put these at a lower height on that. I had one guy write me and said he wanted them like really low so that I guess he could see out of his goggles. That's fine. I like for the LEDs to shine like straight out of the eye sockets, and the LED is the most brightest when it's that way. They're actually really bright LEDs for as small as they are. But once you have it like that, that's pretty much done. Just make sure they're straight. Okay, so we're almost done. We have an area for the microprocessor and the screen that we need to attach it to. So let's get our screen out here. And at the very bottom, you're going to have a connector. We need to go ahead and get that out. So we need to attach this connector to the board, and then we're going to use these wires for the USB connector. So what I usually do is, if you see on the back of the board, there is a connector down here at the bottom, right there. And that's what this connector is going to go into. This male connector is going to go into the female connector that's actually on the bottom of this board. And this is actually what the power is going into. So the power from the switch runs through this wire and down into this. Now I could have probably done it this way, but this particular connector has charging protection and a bunch of other stuff for voltages, so I did it this way so that I could detect voltage and I could display the message at the very beginning that says charge your Ecto goggles if they're low. So what we'll do is, what I usually do is measure down to about where it says USB, and that's usually plenty of room because the connector is actually right there. So down where it says USB and up to those holes right there. So we're gonna clip right in there. Now save these wires because we actually need those. So save those. Put those right there for right now. And we're gonna go ahead and take off some of this here. I saw these on Adam Savage's Favorite Things show a couple years ago. Man, I tell you, I love them. They are so much easier. All right. So you need to put the red through the positive. Make sure there are no stray wires because these wires are really small. And then put the black through the negative. And you can bend them down on the other side, but you get them through. And what I usually have to do, because these wires are so small, I end up using my clips to keep that wire in place while I solder it. All right, once you have that in place, you just want to kind of pull on that wire just very gently, make sure it's attached really well. And again, if these don't stay in place for you, just use a clip to kind of keep them in place until you at least get some solder on them. From that side. All right. So once that it's attached, very important, you want to make sure that there is no solder in between these two wires. You don't want to create a short. Sometimes I just run my fingernail, or you can run a pick or something in between those, just to make sure there's no solder and there's no wires, because if that shorts out, your entire kit's not going to work and you could fry a component. So you want to make sure you see that black line in between those. All right, So that should kind of just hang there like that. Now, we need our other wires. And we need our USB. Where is it? USB connector. All right. So this plugs into the bottom of your microprocessor. And really the only reason, you don't even have to install this, but the only reason I have this there is if you wanted to power this entire thing using USB, a USB battery pack, then this is how it's powered. So basically on the board, you have this is for the USB connector right there. And I don't know if I've got one of those down here or not. No, I don't. So you plug the USB connector in there. You'll plug that into our battery pack. Instead of this powering going through, instead of the power going through this, it actually goes to the USB, and then it runs a 5-volt out to the rest of the board. So you're powering everything else on the board from the microprocessor. When you are powering it just from the switch and this, you're actually just using the batteries to power everything. So hopefully that didn't confuse anyone. Anyway, what we'll do is we're going to clip this here. I don't know if that's going to stay in focus or not, but what I usually do is I'll put some solder here on the ground, which is the far, let's see, ground would be on this side, and your VCC or positive is on this side, and you can put a generous amount of solder on those. Then the easiest thing to do is really just use your helping hands to kind of hold these in place, and I do it kind of like just right there. And you can even do it like this. This is really the easiest way to do it. Just don't burn yourself. Just kind of guide that into the solder, just like that. It needs to be attached really well though, because this is basically the very bottom of the board once you get it installed, and I'll show you what I mean by that. It protrudes just a little bit off the bottom for the GB fans board, and if you look at the 3D printed insert, there's this minor protrusion on the bottom. And that is specifically for this USB. Oh, I can't see. Slide this up. It's specifically for this USB connector. Oh. There we go. All right, so that's connected. See that? And we're going to take off. We're going to leave about, I don't know, that's about 3/4 of an inch. You can leave about that much. You can even do less than that if you wanted to, but 3/4 of an inch is, that's enough. All right. So you're going to take off just a little bit. All right. Make sure you got plenty of wire there. Now, on your board, you see a place down here at the bottom that says USB. And that's where this is going to go. So pretty straightforward. Red to the positive, black to the negative. And I did not take off much wire on this, so I'm gonna use the helping hands to kind of keep this in place. Okay, that's connected. Make sure you cut off the excess wire there. Again, just like the battery connector, make sure there's nothing in between those. Make sure you can see that black line in between. Make sure there's no solder. Make sure there's no wire, and then also make sure give that kind of a gentle pull. Make sure that's connected really well. Okay, so the last thing we have is the screen and the microprocessor, which is the most important part of this. Also, the most expensive part. These are running like $30 to $40 sometimes. So I've been buying them from a place in China where they're sometimes about $17. So it's part of the reason why I've been able to keep this thing so low, the price so low, is because I'm sourcing a lot of parts from outside the country, which is unfortunate, but makes for a longer wait time, but I'm able to keep it a lot cheaper. Okay, so you're gonna just connect the connector into the female connector down at the bottom, and then flip it over. Before you put those in place, you want to put the USB connector there, and then you just feed it through the PCB, just like that. So nice, kind of sandwiched in there. Now, if you let off of it, it's just gonna want to fall out of it. So what I usually do is I'll use these clips, and you want to make sure there is no wire showing in there in between the PCB and the header pins at all. There should be a black piece of plastic in there. Make sure that is all the way pushed down, and I usually put one on this side too. So you can see a little bit of wire in there. It's probably probably can't tell right there. It's tough to see. Maybe a little bit right there. Let's see if I can zoom in on that. So you can see a little bit of wire in there. if I push down harder, it goes away. So what you want to do is, if you have any more of these clips, like I clip this thing down pretty solid, so that it, and you can even move that LED out of the way if you need to. But it's very important that that be pushed all the way down to the PCB, because the 3D printed part has to fit on top of this. Now, if you've been paying attention to my Facebook page, I did point out that this black header strip in here was just a tiny bit taller on a batch of these than some of the other ones. And I don't know how that happened, but it did. So what was happening, wait a minute, not taller, shorter. It was shorter. So what was happening was that when I put the 3D printed piece on the top of it, which is like this, it's got these button covers right there. What was happening is the button pins on the back, it's got these pins that kind of, let's see. It's got these pins on the back right there. So what was happening is that those pins could not, these are for the buttons, they couldn't touch these buttons on this because this was too short. So it was the screen with the buttons was sitting closer to the PCB. So I had to make a different type of, I had to put these little nubs you see right there on the end of that, so that that fixed the spacing problem. And I made this kind of channels for the buttons a little bit longer, so that if I got a screen and a microprocessor that was the normal height, those wouldn't come in contact too hard with the buttons and accidentally press it or anything. Again, you see a little bit of space in between there. If I push down on it some, that goes away. So I'm going to clamp this on this side too. And that looks pretty good. So that's ready to solder now. So it's pretty basic soldering. Again, this is probably the most important thing, is do not leave your soldering iron on any of the header pins for too long, because now you're working with a microprocessor that's got tons of small microscopic components in it, and if they get too hot, you're going to ruin this thing. I promise you, you will. So be very careful soldering these pins, and take your time, but do not leave your soldering iron on the soldering pins too long. If you need to, use some of this tip tinner. I use it all the time. It makes soldering a lot quicker. Keeps your soldering tip clean, and you don't have to spend so much time on each pin. Now, what I usually do on this is I'll get a couple of these pins out of the way. I'll go ahead and solder them, and then I'll take the clips off, so because they just kind of get in the way. So get a couple on the top, get a couple on the bottom. All you want to do is make sure that that gap is not there anymore. Okay, should be enough so I can get the clips off at least. Okay, yeah, that looks good. There's no gap in there or anything. Now, let's take this last one off. Go ahead and get the rest of these. And this is something else that you can, if you get this assembled, something's not working right, make sure you didn't miss any of the pins when you were soldering. Make sure that when you clip them off, that there's enough solder on them. I've done quite a few of these now, and that's one of the things that could also be an issue, is that when you clipped them off, you clipped a lot of the solder off, and the pin actually is not connected to the board very well, or the header pin is not connected to the pad on the board very well, and so you just need some solder on that. So make sure there's plenty of solder on it, not too much. Don't create any shorts. All right. Make sure you inspect those. Make sure that everything looks good. Looks like I missed one. Okay, so last thing, we're gonna connect a battery here, and we're gonna connect a speaker. Okay, so next we're gonna boot this up. And you'll hear a beep where it says acquiring PKA signal and syncing with PKA. You should hear the sound. Just make sure that the bar graph works right when you tilt it up. Make sure your indicator lights work. Make sure that these are fading in and out. You should be able to change them to solid and off. This button should turn the screen off. And then you should be able to mute it by holding that down for 10 seconds. Just like that. Hold down for 10 more seconds to unmute it. Okay, so there's one more thing. We'll take the speaker off. There's one more thing that we need to do, and that is to connect the charging port right there at the top here. So the straight pin connector that we saw earlier, you're going to want to put it so that if you look at it, there's this little opening on the bottom. It's kind of a rectangle opening, but there's a little kind of indentation on the bottom. That needs to go facing down, just like that. So that needs to go facing down. And we're just gonna put that face down on, let's see, put that face down right there. Or you can use your helping hands. This is just a little bit easier. All right. So that's it. You're done. Now, I was going to explain this. Once you get your insert, get the PCB into the insert. Remember earlier I mentioned that this is not all the way flat. There's actually kind of a slight bow out there, and that's so because if you follow the insert and the PCB all the way down, it actually runs just slightly behind that connector right there. So I had to bow this out just slightly, and to make sure that the connector could have the room, and that to make sure that this insert was strong enough back here so it wouldn't break. And so far it works pretty well. So you can just fit this together. It pretty much just snaps in place. For the GB fans inserts, what I've been doing is I've been adding a little bit of glue right here, right in there, right here, before I put them on. Now, before you do that, though, what you really need to do is you need to go ahead and connect your batteries. Because once you do that, once you glue your insert on, you're not going to be able to reach these batteries very well. It can be done from the back, but it is very hard to do. So go ahead and connect your batteries. And this one I'm just going to put 2 on. Now I use E6000 glue or Gorilla Grip glue. It's kind of the same thing. So if you use that, you can basically pull the inserts apart. Now for the GB fans, you've got a bottom insert, and then you've got a top part of the insert. And the bottom insert has these battery channels, and you'll see the batteries basically just lay in there, just like that. And you can get up to 3 batteries in there, and unfortunately that's as many as I could fit in the GB fans. As I mentioned earlier, the Goons, that can fit more. It can fit 1 extra, so 4 altogether. But if I put this together, I can't really do it that way. If I go ahead and put this insert together here, make sure those batteries are in there. So it fits just like that together. So just kind of like a sandwich, just like that. You want to make sure there's no wires hanging out of the back. Make sure those battery wires are contained inside that battery channel. And if you have 3 batteries that you're putting in there, you'll probably need to use a tool to kind of get those wires tucked in there so they're not hanging out into your eye area, your viewport area. And then what I usually do is I'll put some glue right here, and so that this front insert or top insert will stay kind of snug to that. Let's actually put our battery or our speaker back in there, so we don't forget. Go ahead and snap this back together. Speaker goes in there just like that. Now, if you've got a 3rd battery that's in there, now it's a real challenge to get these batteries all lined up in this channel like that. But it can be done. You just need to be patient. So what I usually do is just kind of crack it a little bit and lay them down like that. Make sure the wires are kind of laying flat, and then it just shuts really easily. So before you do that, though, what you need to do is you'll need to put a little bit of glue down here, right there. and on these posts. Once you do that, get your batteries lined up, just like we did a minute ago. And then you'll want to use some clips to keep these shut, just like that. Now, I'm not going to glue this one, but if I were gluing it, that would be it would be pretty much done at this point, as far as assembling the insert part. Now there's a kind of a cosmetic overlay part that I've got. You've got your screen cover. That's going to go obviously over the screen, and I leave this screen protector on when I ship these. You could take it off if you're assembling it, but if you're gluing this together, I would keep this screen protector on so you don't get glue on the screen, and I would also keep it on while you're assembling everything so you don't get solder or anything like that on your screen. But once you have this all together like that, you're also going to put this over that. Now make sure that that is lined up with the speaker hole and the indicators right there, just like that. And you're just going to let that dry. You've got a charging port access right there. But once you get this assembled, what you do want to make sure of is you're going to want to boot this up. Let me clip these back on so we can just pretend this is all glued together. Okay, what you want to make sure about though is once you've got this and you want to put your screen cover on so that's not in the way. Once you've got this assembled, you want to make sure that the buttons press. Because you remember earlier I told you about the header pin kind of spacer being a little bit taller. You want to make sure that these buttons on the screen cover press the right way. And it looks like they do. You're going to do kind of one press, 1 second, just to make sure that those lights change. And then the screen should turn off here. What's happening is I don't have this glued yet, so it's pressing the other button. There it goes. Okay. So everything looks like it's working properly. For the GB fans, let's see, where's the other button? I mentioned earlier you have a lot more room on this one. So once we drop this in to the insert, it's kind of fits right in, very snug. All right, once we get that in, you have some options where you can put the batteries. You can put one here, and you can put one up there. You can put both of them up here, or you can put one over here. But I usually like to put one over here, and we'll put our speaker in. 2. So the battery goes in this last place right here. Go ahead and put your speaker in place, and then you have to. I took out some 3D printed material there, so you can kind of curl this wire up right in there if you need to. Let's see. There you go. And you're gonna have to glue that in place so it stays. And the other batteries go up here, and you have a lot more room up there, so it's not as big a deal. Once that's in, you can glue it right there if you want, or you can glue it down here. Doesn't matter. I usually glue these face down, so the writing is face down, because the top of the battery is a little bit more flat because they've got this fold over piece right there, and that makes it flatten out kind of nicely on the bottom or on the insert. So you can glue that down. Once you do that, you're pretty much done with this. And obviously you need to still put the external parts, decorative parts, and the screen cover on this. So you'll glue that in place, and I usually just, for both of these, I usually just put a dollop of glue on these little posts right there. That's exactly what they're for. And then this kind of goes right in there. Just make sure that they're lined up with the indicator lights right there. And you can also test the buttons on this as well. Now this one, you have a lot more room to push the buttons. These hasn't really been a problem with the Goon ones. Yeah. So those are going just fine. Okay. I think that's it. As far as installing these, I think I've got some directions, but it's pretty easy. The holes right there are for the the side knobs. You unscrew those, line those up, and screw them back in. And then that's pretty much it for the GB fans. The Goon model, yeah, I mean, you can pretty much just glue that in place. You just drop it in and glue it in place anywhere you want, or anyhow you want. The if you're going to install the beacon light, before you print this out, you're going to probably want to alter that so that you got a hole right there. I used a drill, and it completely destroyed the outside of this. I would put it in Tinkercad and put a hole through there for your beacon light. The USB, let me show you this. The USB connector cable will connect to this bottom one right here, and it will run out of here. Will run out of that hole, and it will run to the back of your strap. Now I've found two USB battery packs that work really well with the electronics that I've set up, and I actually used this in the parade that I was in for the Christmas parade, and it was at 100%. I think the walk took about an hour and a half or 2 hours or more. We were standing in line for about an hour before that, so 3 hours, and the battery is at 87%. So you can see you could use one of these batteries all day long, and it would have no problem powering all these electronics. So what I did is I 3D printed these little hooks, and I just put it on the back of the strap, on the back of the, let's see, yeah, just like this. So it sits kind of behind your head, and then the USB cable runs kind of out of here, out of the inside of the goggles, and then it runs over and plugs into that. Same thing for this. I'll put the names of these up on the website. This one is called I have no idea. It's just called Power Bank. This one is called an Energy QC. They're roughly the same type of battery that's in there. You're probably going to get a little bit more out of this one. The problem with this one though is, oh, here's the USB. Okay, here you go. Let's just run through this then. Okay, so as I mentioned before, your connection is right there at the bottom. You're going to connect that. And for this type of battery, you just plug it in. As soon as you plug it in, it starts booting up. So it's booting up. You're not going to use the on and off switch. You're using you've pretty much got all the batteries disconnected right now. They're not even really doing anything, so you don't need the batteries at all in there if you're going to do it this way. If you don't want to use the battery anymore, just unplug it. The whole thing goes off. Now with the Goon model, you're going to run this wire through that hole right there. You run it through there, and you have to take the insert out. The insert for the Goon model, you never really have to glue that in place. It fits really well. GB Fans is a little bit different because you've got the bottom insert that you have to deal with as well. So I've got a little hole there for this to run out of, and this will run again to the back of your head wherever this battery is. Now the problem with this battery pack is that it doesn't have a USB-C connector to it, so you are going to have to use some other kind of USB cable to connect into this USB battery pack. But you can see it's booting up just fine. Now, real quickly, these battery packs, you're not going to be able to use just any battery pack you want to. What I have found is that these both are 5 volt, 2 amps. If it's any less than that, some battery packs are like 1 amp. It's probably not going to even boot up. I've tried a bunch of different ones, and these are actually the only 2 that I've been able to find that work. I ordered a bunch of these type of battery packs from Amazon, or at least ones that I thought you could wear comfortably on the back of your goggles with no problem. And these are the only 2 that I've found that have worked. So if anyone finds one that works, let me know. I would love to list it on the website along with these. I think that's it. I think that's everything. The beacon lights, you're kind of on your own how you're going to install those. I threw it in there as kind of something that it would be fun to add, and I know some people did buy some of the beacon lights from me, so I'm curious to see how they end up installing those. The GB fans is going to be really tough to get those in. It can be done, but there's just so much to work with there. Now the beacon light is this top connection on the GB fans. The Goon also has that same beacon connector right there. It's the second one, but then it has another beacon connector over here on this side. And you see that's pretty much what it does. It's just going to flash red all the time. No matter what happens on the screen, it just is a constant flash. And it's a pretty bright LED too. But yeah, I mean, I haven't actually installed that on any of my sets. Well, no, I did install it on that one. But as I mentioned, like, I should have put a hole in that before I 3D printed it, so I'm going to redo these. But as far as the GB fans, I haven't installed it in that because I don't want to crack the shell on that. And I'm not really sure where I'd put it. So I'm interested to see what people do with that and how they install it. But I think that's it. That's the full installation. You've got 2 working inserts now. You got a GB fans and a Goon insert. Anyone has any questions? If I left anything out by mistake, let me know. Anyone comes up with any kind of better ways of doing anything, as always, just send me a message. I'd love to hear about it. But other than that, feel free to drop me a line if you need anything, and take it easy. I appreciate it. Thanks. Bye.